Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in today to learn more about securing remote workers during this challenging time. My name is Cyrus Mistry, and I'm the Group Product Manager for Chrome Enterprise. In today's session, we're going to start out by talking about the current landscape and how remote working has created new security challenges for IT. We're going to discuss what IT needs in order to create a full stack solution, and we will cover Google's product offerings in this area. Please feel free to ask questions in our live Q&A module, and please remember to fill out the session survey at the end of the presentation. We would love to get your feedback. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. COVID-19 has required organizations to embrace remote working just to keep the lights on. In fact, on March 17th, Gartner ran a study with 800 HR executives to ask about how COVID has impacted their business. They found that 88% of organizations have asked their employees to work remotely. 97% have canceled work-related travel. But most interestingly, only 10% of the organizations plan to reduce work hours. So basically, despite the prevalence of coronavirus, business demands are requiring that work must go on. At the same time that all of that transition is happening, which is enormous in itself, cyber criminals are getting emboldened by this. They're deploying all kinds of new attacks that take advantage of business users. This has created a really, really challenging environment for IT. They are trying to protect corporate data without having physical access to the device, to the user, or to the network. In fact, Gartner reported a new type of attack variant targeting business users with fake coronavirus-related emails. And they're phishing attacks, right? Designed to trick employees into opening attachments. And interestingly, when the user opens these attachments, there's malicious software that can infect the end user device. These have the potential to cause a lot of damage, and we're already starting to see this. This is only one example of what's happening. And the third very interesting thing that's going on at this time, so we've got to move to remote work. We've got this new type of security challenge that we're facing with new types of threats at the same time. And IT departments are being asked to cut costs, right? Which is a remarkable set of things that they have to deal with. And this is across the board. This is because almost every business is facing some type of economic impact from this shutdown. In fact, you can actually see the quote here, right? 70% of organizations are planning to cut costs. But what's interesting is they're planning to cut costs through more effective use of technology. And I think that's where we can come in and help. So what do we mean by full stack approach? Secure remote working requires a full stack approach. It requires thinking about secure endpoints, right? And we're going to cover each of these, by the way. Secure endpoints to harden devices to reduce or almost completely eliminate the risk of malware. User protections to make sure we're handling things like the phishing attack that I just mentioned. Cloud-based management, so a really, really simple, scalable way to manage everything that's out there. And a whole new concept called zero trust access, which is an extremely simple but extremely secure mechanism to have your end users accessing SaaS applications without needing a VPN of any kind. So let's talk about Google and Chrome Enterprise specifically, and let's talk about the full stack. And the areas we're going to talk about are, we're going to talk a little bit about Chromebooks, and I can share with you that I have been on the team as a product manager on Chrome OS for 10 years, more than 10 years actually. And I think I'm now the longest running product manager on Chrome OS. So there's a lot that I can give you some interesting insights into how they work and how they operate. The second thing is talk a little bit about the Chrome Enterprise upgrade, which is the OS Enterprise upgrade features that are there, as well as the scalable cloud-based fleet management that comes with it. Talk a little bit about Chrome Browser Cloud Management, which is a new offering and really exciting to tell you how that works. And then a new feature we called Beyond Corp Remote Access, and what exactly that is and how it can help you. So let's dive in. Let's start with the secure endpoints. This is probably one of my favorite things to talk about, is how Chrome OS is actually built. Chrome OS was built fundamentally very, very differently. It was actually built from the very beginning. We had the luxury, again, of being a late entrant into the OS market. We had the luxury of seeing how all of the other operating systems work and what was so painful about working with them, right? On performance, on security, on managing updates, etc. And so every single layer of the stack, when we were designing it, we thought of a completely novel way to do it that would ensure tremendous levels of security and make it really, really easy to manage, because you don't have to worry about things like antivirus, etc. And so we're going to talk about each of these, which hopefully will be very exciting. The first thing you should know is that all Chromebooks, regardless of the manufacturer model, and there are dozens and dozens of models out there, come with what we call the Titan C security chip. It's built into the hardware of Chrome OS, and it ensures the integrity of the OS and the firmware. It protects users from brute force attacks. It's the security chip that is at the core of many of the Chromebook security features. You know, it's very interesting. A lot of people don't know this, but every single Chromebook from the hardware layer up has a hardware signature that guarantees the authenticity of that device and ensures that all the way up the stack, we have a root of trust that we can believe in going up to ensure that you are running exactly the operating system we want, that you are running in an unhacked version. You're not in developer mode. You haven't done anything like that. That's a very fundamental thing to Chromebooks. And it's very unique to be able to have that level of vertical integration all the way down, but at the same time have this tremendous ability to pick from all of the top OEMs that are out there. And you can see that when you think about other types of computers out there, you either have a full vertical stack solution, but only one OEM, or you don't get all that vertical integration all the way down to the hardware layer, which means predictability in every single Chromebook that you buy. And so we have kind of got the best of both worlds, tremendous variety, tremendous price availability, but you've also got this phenomenal security guarantee. Also important to note on the Titan C, Google keeps it updated ourselves automatically to ensure that you're always protected from even the most recent threats that we're seeing. Another interesting point that I like to bring up is, we call it built-in antivirus, but that doesn't mean that there's antivirus software actually running on the device. It means we've made it so that there's no such thing as an executable hacking into the operating system and running malicious things. And there's a variety of reasons for this. From the very beginning, we decided to first of all, we made the operating system read-only, which means you cannot modify the operating system. On other operating systems in the past, you probably will know this, some of you that have been around as long as me, that when you installed an application, it became a super user essentially. It could do all kinds of things. It could change registry settings. In fact, this is why in the old days, it was actually when you uninstalled an app, there were still remnants of the app all around. There's no concept of that on a Chromebook. There's no concept of updating or modifying the OS via an app. It is completely read-only. There's a second thing that we do that is also very interesting, where we do something called sandboxing. And those of you that are in security, you'll know what this means, but it means protecting everything and putting a box around it so that everything has to stay within there. Not only is the entire OS to some degree sandboxed like we talk about, but then every single application is sandboxed. The Chrome browser itself is in a sandbox. Every tab within the Chrome browser is in a sandbox. We even have this concept. It was an enormous engineering effort by the security team to do something called site isolation, which takes this notion of sandboxing and takes it one level further to make sure that an untrustworthy website can't get information from other sites. And so sandboxing is very important, and it's a concept in security called defense in depth, which many of you will have heard about, which basically means you have to go through a lot of hoops. You would have to break out of the site, out of the tab, out of Chrome, et cetera, to even get there. And then you would still run up against the wall of you can't really modify the operating system. And then there's this other really neat aspect, which is number 3 on here, that is one of my favorite things, which is we think we're really good at security, right? You can ask security experts about how great Chromebooks are security-wise and why they're loved by government entities and all of that all around. But we're not sure of absolutely everything that we could have possibly missed. And so every single time we boot, right, a Chromebook already boots in 5, 6, 7 seconds, right, very, very quickly. We actually spend time in every boot, in those precious seconds that we force ourselves to be really, really fast at, to verify back from that root of trust that makes sure that every single bit of the operating system is exactly as we intended it. This is a very, very important concept. We were one of the very first to ever do anything like this verified boot. But here's where it gets really interesting. Let's say we find out that something has been tampered with, or the operating system isn't exactly what we expected it should be. We alert the user, we don't boot from that, and we actually keep a clean, pristine, segregated operating system on there, and we will actually boot from that. And the user won't even know. And so what's really neat is by having those two operating systems, you're always ensured to have one clean operating system that you can revert to if necessary. But that also provides another added benefit, which is because you have two operating systems on every Chromebook, if you have modifications like updates that you're getting, right? As you're working, you're happily working, updates are coming down to the operating system. They can happen on the second version. And as soon as it's done, whenever you reboot, we will actually jump you to the new operating system. So the user doesn't even know. In fact, this is a little secret I love to tell people, one of my many little tidbits that a lot of people don't realize. When you sign out of a Chromebook and you get back to the login screen, right? You can do that all the time, sign in as a new user, whatever you want, right? Very, very shareable device. If you have if the second version of the operating system is actually updated and is ready to go, when you sign out, we'll actually do a fast, silent reboot and bring you back to the login screen. So you'll be back on the login screen thinking nothing has happened, but you're actually running a completely new version of the operating system. If you compare this to other operating systems that you've probably been on where, please go get some coffee and your lunch and we'll talk to you in 25 minutes as we update your operating system, there is none of that here. No downtime. It's a really, really amazing feature, I think. Now let's talk briefly about user protections. There are several different ways that we make sure that we are protecting users on the web, right? We mentioned the phishing attacks, right? The fake coronavirus themed emails that we mentioned earlier. There's also all kinds of new social engineering tactics, and they're trying to get access to the type of passwords you might have, et cetera. And a lot of times these are not through any fault of the end user. And there's also this concept of data breaches, which is even if you didn't do anything wrong, you had a great secure password, that third-party SaaS provider got hacked and all of the passwords came out. And so these are the types of things that we're going to talk about protecting against. So phishing and malware protection. Google has something called safe browsing, where we literally examine billions of URLs across the web, across the world, to check for unsafe websites. This is by far the largest of any kind. In fact, half of the world's online population is protected by safe browsing, believe it or not. It's just 4 billion devices a day, which is just staggering when you think about it. Now, we do a few things. First of all, if we think that you're about to get to a malicious website, we will alert you and basically effectively stop the user from going there and they'll back out. We do one step further too. We will alert webmasters that their site has been compromised. In fact, we'll notify them through the Search Console. We will detail steps to recover from an infection, and we'll even give them examples of specific code that might have been injected into their site. And now all of that is great, but we went even one step further, is we're making this available to the world, right? Google is a very, very open culture. We believe that safe browsing is just something that's very fundamental to the world should have. And so we've made sure that anybody can take advantage of this, which I think is really exciting. There's another really cool thing that we have launched recently, and it is called Password Checkup. So if you guys get a chance, go to passwords.google.com. I'm sure all of you are going now. You can wait a few minutes or make a note of it on the paper next to you to go to passwords.google.com and do something called the password checkup, which is really, really neat. We actually will check for all kinds of things like, hey, by the way, you've used your password multiple places. Or by the way, the passwords that you have used on this website, know that that website has become compromised. So you may want to change that password right away. This is a great example of the types of things that we're trying to do to empower people to make sure that you have very, very secure passwords at all times, right? As much as we hope that the world is going to move towards two-factor authentication and all those great things, this is still, unfortunately, a very big reality of how we get access. Let's talk briefly about cloud-based management. I alluded to that earlier. So managing Chromebooks at scale is super important. We have many now, probably more than a dozen Chromebook customers that have over 100,000 Chromebooks that they manage entirely through admin.google.com. Most of them have not hired a single additional person. We have deployments of over 250,000 Chromebooks, and they just go in here. It's the same if you've got 10, if you've got 50,000, right? Just tremendously scalable. They never need to think about, local servers and syncing databases, and we handle all of that. And I think that's a really, really great feature of having that. In addition, you can manage your Chrome browser, how that works, what extensions you want them to have or what extensions you don't want them to have, and all of that through exactly the same interface. In fact, when you set that up for the Chrome browser, of course, those automatically take effect on the Chromebook, which is also nice. Those are called user policies, right? So certain groups of users may have certain apps that they want, certain progressive web apps, certain Android apps, etc. Of course, we're Google, so search is there. So you don't need to go filtering through pages to find it. You can just go up and say, hey, I'm looking for, a certificate, and it'll jump you right to that section on how to work through all of that. And of course, we have all kinds of really great device reports, what's going on with my OS updates, is my fleet updated, all of those types of things. There's a lot of good reports for you as well. There's a feature that I worked on. Again, one of the benefits of a completely cloud-based scalable system is that with the punch of a button, you can actually completely disable a device, right? So in this remote working world, right, someone says, oh gosh, I'm so sorry, I left my device here, or it got lost, or it got stolen, my house was broken into. It's not a problem, because you can instantly brick the device. And you can even put a custom message up saying, hey, please call this if you find this. This has been a tremendous theft deterrent, actually, because people know if you steal a Chromebook, you're not actually going to get much value from it. It's not going to be able to be used for anything outside, right? And I think that's actually a really, really good thing. The good news is user data already on a Chromebook is 100% encrypted. There is no option to not have it encrypted. And so you're already much safer just by the fact that you're using a Chromebook. But I do like this lost and stolen prevention feature. Of course, you can do things like restricting who can log in. You can have SAML, SSO, you can have two-factor, you can do all of those types of things to make sure that who gets even has the ability to get access to the Chromebook. And you can do all of that directly from the admin console as well. Very, very easy. One of the first things that people set up. This is a new feature, which is pretty exciting, which is you can now, because it used to be you'd restart and reboot your device every morning. I still remember 15 years ago, it might, every night you'd turn it off, and then when you turn it on, you would go for a nice walk because it would take about 20 minutes to boot. You don't have to do that anymore. What's kind of nice is people are just suspending, right? They're closing the lid. But that means that many people are just running on the same operating system for weeks and some for months. And so now there's a new feature where admins can kind of nudge you and say, hey, by the way, if you reboot, you've got a new update. I mean, the nice thing is it is as simple as that. Literally reboot, 6 seconds later, you're running on your brand new operating system. But we wanted to make sure that we notified users of this fact that, hey, please reboot. And now you can take it one step further and you can force them to reboot, because if there's a really important security fix or something that you really, really want to have them have in 83, you can say, look, you've got 7 days or you've got 3 days or whatever you decide that you must reboot this device. And so you can actually forcibly do that, which I think is kind of cool. Now, all of that great stuff I mentioned, you can also now do for the Chrome browser, which I think is also really, really exciting, right? So you can manage your entire set of browsers instead of using, Registry and ADMX and SCCM and all of that fun. You can actually do this entirely from the cloud. And that gives you a lot of other really cool advantages, right? There's a really neat feature called the password alert feature, which will make sure that if your corporate employee is trying to use that same corporate password elsewhere on some other website, right? They want that to be their password for some third-party SaaS site. We will literally notify the admin and we will notify the end user, hey, you need to change your password, right? That's not allowed. Also, the other benefit of doing this is you can get all kinds of interesting reports that you couldn't get, right, when you're managing the browser locally. If you do it here, you can get all kinds of reports about the types of extensions that people are using and the applications that they're using. So there's a lot of other cool stuff that you can get. You can manage OS browser updates as well in a much easier way. So there's a lot of these cool things. So I definitely urge you to try this out. It's called Chrome Browser Cloud Management. Do look this up when you get a chance. And now let's talk briefly about zero trust access and what that means. Zero trust access. So traditionally, to get access to websites, there was this concept of we're going to use a VPN. And if you get access to that VPN, you kind of tunnel through, and then you kind of get this access to, based on what you're authorized to do, you get access to basically effectively the corporate network. This is, ironically, it sounds super secure. It's very difficult to set up and manage, as you know. And it gives a false sense of security. It's not essentially that much more secure. So believe it or not, what Google has been running for a long time now is something we internally have called Beyond Corp, and now we've made it accessible to the world. To get access to everything we need, we actually don't need a VPN, right? So for me to get access to all the most, detailed internal feature requests or roadmaps or whatever I want, there's no such thing as a VPN, right? We simply use something called Beyond Corp Remote Access, where basically there's this rules engine that's listening and decides, what is the OS version, is the OS the one that you want? You may say, actually, I only want this to be Chromebooks, or I want to make sure that they're running at least on this version. I want to make sure lock screen is set up. I want to make sure device encryption, again, you get that for free on Chromebooks, or I don't trust certain IPs in certain countries or whatever you may do. But by doing that, there's this real-time decision that's automatically made. It's entirely cloud-based, which is super cool as well. But the end user can be on any network. And that is a really, really powerful thing, right? You're getting more secure by assessing what's really going on at that point. But you're essentially saying, I don't trust anything, so I'm going to look at things very differently. I don't trust the network. I don't trust anything that they're going on. I'm just going to make sure that the traffic's encrypted, that the device says it is, the authentication, that the user is who they say they are. This is also extremely low TCO, right? You're talking about days to set this up versus months, if any of you have ever set up a VPN. Very, very simple pay-as-you-go pricing as well, which I think is really nice. So do look this up as well. There's a lot been written on this. Very, very exciting area. You can see the link right on the screen. So thinking about the full stack now, what we've covered a lot, right? We covered the Chromebooks, why they are kind of have a very different way of handling things as far as malware and virus and phishing. The Chrome Enterprise upgrade, which we showed you in the admin console, the types of things that you can do to manage the enterprise level OS features, the enterprise networking features, and all of the other modes that are on the device, and kiosk managed guest sessions, all of that, who can sign in, shareability. And then we even talked about this Beyond Corp Remote Access. In fact, believe it or not, for Chrome OS, you can actually, and I really love calling this out, you can say you only want access not just to Chromebooks, but you want access only to Chromebooks where we have verified access, meaning where we are sure that this Chromebook is in a pristine state, right? Every single Chromebook, when they're running version X, are all running exactly the same set of bits. It's a very freeing feeling, right, on a Monday morning to have that. So this combination should be super easy to use, really, really secure, and really easy for your end users. And I think that's what makes this a very compelling package. And lastly, you may want to check out our remote work toolkit at the URL on your screen, goo.gle/CE remote work toolkit. There's a lot of great information in there and a lot of what we just covered. And lastly, on behalf of the Chrome Enterprise team here at Google, we want to wish you safety and good health in the coming weeks and beyond. Thank you again for joining us today.